Today we will be using our concept mastery routine chart to learn more about reptiles, and we will also look at our concept mastery routine poster that we made last week in class together. What I need you to do today is to help me fill in these boxes on the chart with what you already know and what you learned last week. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with our C, convey concept name, and I'll give that to you today. Today we're learning about reptiles. You can go ahead and write that in box 1. Now reptiles are part of a bigger classification of animals known as vertebrates. We're going to put vertebrates in box 2 because it is our overall concept name, our O for our concept mastery. So when talking about vertebrates, we talked about them last week when we talked about mammals, and we said that there's one thing about them that they all have in common. They all have something in their body that aligns them. In humans, it helps us stand up straight. What do you think that could be? Yes.
Is it a spine?
It is a spine. So all vertebrates have a spine. That's what makes them vertebrates. So we're talking about things that are always present. We can move on to box 4 and our other C, classify the characteristics. So we're going to be talking about things that are always present, sometimes present, and never present in reptiles. So last week we talked about mammals. And we said that mammals are warm-blooded animals, which means that they can regulate their own body temperature. Reptiles, on the other hand, are cold-blooded animals. They cannot regulate their own body temperature. So we're going to go ahead and put cold-blooded and are always present. So reptiles. They're cold-blooded. Can anybody give me an example of a reptile? Just off the top of your head.
A snake?
Yes, a snake is a reptile. So when thinking about snakes, let's think about what they look like. What do we see when we look at snakes?
Scales.
We do see scales. So reptiles have scaly, dry skin. They always have scaly, dry skin. So we can put that in our always present column. So reptiles always have scaly, dry skin. They cannot have smooth, dry skin. It wouldn't work. So we're going to write smooth, dry skin in our never present. Or smooth, wet skin, sorry. So now we've talked about what they look like. Let's think. How are reptiles born? Do they lay eggs, or do they give birth to a live animal?
Don't they lay eggs?
So they do lay eggs. Most reptiles lay eggs, actually, but there is about 20 species of reptiles that do give living birth. So we're going to go ahead and put that in our sometimes present. So we can say lay eggs and give birth is sometimes present. All right, so we talked about what they look like, how they're born. What do they eat?
Plants?
Yes, most reptiles do eat plants. However, let's say a crocodile. A crocodile eats other animals. So reptiles eat both plants and animals, meaning it goes in sometimes present. All right, so we've got what they look like, how they're born, what they eat. What about where they live? Where do reptiles live?
Don't some of them live in the water?
So yeah, So they don't live in the water. They can't live their entire lives in the water. Some reptiles can spend great amounts of time in the water, like a sea turtle, but sea turtles have special narrow nostrils, so they can come up to the surface and breathe that air in. They cannot spend their whole lives underwater. So they are land living animals. So that's going to go on our always present, live on land. All right, we've got what they look like, how they're born, what they eat, where they live. Let's go ahead and think about how they get around. So you mentioned snakes. How do snakes get around?
Well, they slither.
They do slither. So they slither, but what kind of other reptiles? What about lizards? Do lizards slither around?
No, they have legs.
They do have legs. How many?
4.
They do have 4 legs. So in sometimes present, we can go ahead and write no legs or 4 legs. All right, so we talked about how animals live on land. They can't breathe underwater, so they don't have gills. So we can go ahead and write gills in our never present. But if they don't have gills, how do they breathe?
Well, wouldn't they have to have lungs then?
They do have lungs. So in always present, we can go ahead and write lungs. All right, we talked about what is always, sometimes, and never present in animals. Now in reptiles. Now let's think of some examples and non-examples. So we're going to move to our E and we're going to explore the examples. Now we already mentioned a few. Can anybody give me one?
Snake.
Snake, yes. So a snake is an example of one. They're cold-blooded, they have scaly, dry skin, live on land, they have lungs. Most snakes lay eggs. Let's think of another one. We talked that they live a lot of their lives in water, but they always have to come back to land.
Turtle.
Turtles, yes. Now let's look at some non-examples. So we were talking about them earlier. They're also vertebrates. Some might have hair on them.
A dog.
Yes, dog. A mammal.
Yes, mammal.
Dog is a non-example. What about... So when we think of reptiles, they have to have scaly, dry skin. What about those things that fly in the air?
A bird.
A bird. What do birds have?
Feathers.
So they are not reptiles. We're going to go ahead and put them in our non-example area. All right. So now that we've got a couple examples and some non-examples, let's go ahead and practice with another one. Let's go ahead. Let's look at lizards. So, lizard. Let's think. So, do lizards have smooth, wet skin?
No.
No, so we're not going to draw that down there. Do lizards have 4 legs?
Yeah.
They do. So we can draw our line. So you see that sometimes present lizard. Do lizards have scaly, dry skin?
For sure.
So we're going to go ahead and draw that in the always present. Let's see. Do lizards have gills? Do they need to breathe underwater?
No.
No, so we're not going to connect that. So they must have lungs to breathe. Oops, sorry. All right. So by looking at our always present, sometimes present, and never present, we said both are never presents. We're not there. So we're going to look and